everyone, welcome to your week 9 Figma tutorial assignment. We're mostly going to be doing the same assignment that we did for week 7. I'm just going to walk you through it in a video tutorial so that it's easier for you to follow along. I am including a few more steps here that aren't like written down, but I'll try to include them in the written form as well by next week. So yeah, let's get started. As always, let's just start by creating a section. Here in the second menu, I'm gonna go to section and create a section. And I'm gonna put my name on the section. I'm also going to change the background color by going to fill, clicking on this, and I'm gonna choose, since I want the same gray, I'm just gonna choose the custom color and then click on that. And because my screens are going to be white, so I just want like good contrast with the background. I'm gonna zoom in. And we can start with a phone frame. So I'm going to click on frame. The shortcut is F, and I'm going to start with the iPhone 16. I'm going to drag this into my frame so we can zoom in. And yeah, so I'm going to start by creating a layout grid for the iPhone. So if you go onto layout guide and click on the plus icon, and then you go to this menu here and click on grid, you see columns and rows. So I'm going to choose columns and I'm going to put 4 columns and I'm going to give it a margin of 24 and a gutter of 24 as well. And I'm going to close this. So essentially what a layout guide is it's a guide. It's like a ruler for you, a reference for you to see, you know, um, the space inside which your components sit. If you want an app to look professional, you're supposed to have borders, you're supposed to have consistent spacing. So this just helps you do that without actually like putting in elements into the screen. So it's like a layer on the screen that is not a part of the final design. So if you're used to working in, say, Photoshop, Illustrator, or even on PowerPoint, sometimes you can put in like layout grids. So this is essentially that in Figma. And yeah, it also helps when you're creating responsive designs. So essentially on a website, you would have 16 columns and then on a phone, you'd have 4. So, bringing down 16 columns to 4 helps you like create that responsive website as well. So yeah, so I'm going to create a layout guide just so I can see like where the content in my wireframe should sit. Again, like this is a little more advanced, I'd say, and not like, mandatory for creating your wireframes. But I promise you, if you do this work up front, like your final designs are going to come out looking a lot better. And just having like putting in the legwork up front like helps a lot. Okay, so let's get started on the component part of this. So I'm going to go back into the assets here. These are most of the assets that you'll be needing for today. I might like go in and find a few more icons to put into the design just so that I can show you how to do it as well. But for now, like for the navigation bar, let's start with this. So I'm gonna go in and choose the home icon. Let me just look over the instructions once again. So increase size to 32, add text below, and auto layout. Okay. So I'm going to come back here. I'm going to paste my icon. And yeah, so make sure when you're copying over the icon to copy it with the frame. So this helps because what happens is like, let me go back to the icons. As you can see, the width of the icons are different, especially for say like this home icon and this grocery icon, the width is a lot more different. So when you change the size and you're trying to match the size, like it ends up looking very wonky because not all of the icons are like square or like, for example, like this is more rectangular than square. So when you're trying to like change the size, you want it to look consistent and neat. And having a frame around your original icon helps you like do that a lot more easily, I'd say. So yeah. So I'll go back to this. I've selected the frame here. So I'm gonna go back to the right side menu. I'm gonna lock the aspect ratio. What this does is that if I change the width, the height changes automatically. Here it's the same, but it locks the ratio that it's in. So if one is more than the other, it just locks that ratio in. So I'm gonna change this to 32. And as you can see, like the vector size also increased. So yeah, that it looks good. So I'm gonna add text below this to say home. Okay, so this is white text and I want it to match the icon color. So I'm gonna click outside of that. So then I'm not in the typing mode anymore. And instead it's just selected the text box. And if you go in the right side menu under layout, you have resizing. Right now it is on fixed size, which means like the box is fixed and whatever text, is written inside is just on the same, like the box doesn't either change height or width based on the word. But we want the box to expand based on the length of the word, so we're going to choose auto width. And then I'm going to come back down here into color and I'm gonna fill it with black. Yeah. And yeah, so you can, if you want, you can also go into typography and, choose the font that you want. I'd say like usually stick to one or two fonts at the most in design. And always choose like a font with multiple weights, which is, regular, bold, semi-bold, light italic, all of that. But for the sake of your wireframe, like if you have like bold and regular, that should be enough. So I'm gonna go with this font. This has again only bold and regular, but since it's a wireframe, it's okay. And then I think 20 is okay. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the frame and I'm going to select the text box. So I'm holding down on Shift and selecting. And I'm going to make this into an auto layout. So like the option exists on the right hand frame. It says toggle auto layout, but I think, no, this one only has frame selection. But if you do frame selection, it does not automatically apply an auto layout. So I always like to use the shortcut, which is Shift A, and that puts it into an auto layout frame. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the gap here on the right hand side. I'm going to change that to 0 because I don't want any gap between the icon and the text for now. I might change that later, but I think this is okay. And then I'm going to say align to center. And this is the most important part. So I'm going to go to height and I'm going to say hug contents. So this just means that like the frame height is based on the contents within the frame. And I'm going to do the same for the width as well. I'm going to say hug contents and it's going to like change based on the content inside. But you can see like the text went down. So that just means that the auto width for the text for some reason changed. I'm not completely sure why Figma does this, but the easy fix is to like choose your text layer, go in and say auto width, and then that automatically fixes this. A good practice as a designer is always to like name your layers as well. And like the earlier you start this, the easier it becomes for you. But yeah, a big part of like designing is collaborating with other designers, developers. So anybody coming into this file should know exactly what you've put in and what you're designing. So I'm gonna go here and say, um, navigation. Okay. Okay. And now I'm gonna like duplicate this. So there's a few ways to do this. The obvious one is copy and paste, which is Command C, Command V if you're on a Mac, right? Oops. Just going to drag that out. The other way you can do this is to do Command D, which is I'm going to select both and I'm just going to hit Command D and that duplicates them in one click. And then the last way you can like, duplicate a frame or any element on Figma is to hold down on Option if you're on Mac. And as you can see, the cursor changes to this like double cursor. And if you drag out the element, it duplicates that element. So those are a few ways for you to duplicate an element in Figma. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of them. And again, I'm going to hit Shift A on my keyboard, and that puts it into an auto layout frame. Um, a few things here. I'm going to go into the gap and change that to 24, so that like the gap between each navigation option is 24 pixels. I'm going to set, okay, the width is already set to hug, and so is the height. And I'm going to keep it that way because um, I don't want the frame to extend beyond the elements on it. Okay, so let's go back, right? The next step would be to replace the text in the icons. So we have grocery, shopping, browse, and me. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to select all of these icons. I'm going to hit Command C, zoom out, go back to my section, hit Command V. Okay, so now let me change the text first. So the way that you can do like this, because this is in a frame, I'm hovering over this, it's selected like this frame, but I want to select the text. So either you can hit T and this changes into a cursor, which means if you click on a text layer, it automatically goes in and then you can type in the text. The other way that you can do this is, if you hold down Command and hover over the text layer, it automatically it it gives you a blue underline here, which indicates that like if you click on it, it chooses the text layer automatically. And then you can double click on it to change the word in the text box. So I'm going to change this to grocery. I'm going to change this to shopping. I'm going to change this to else. Last one to say me. Okay, so if I click on the frames, you can see like all of them are expanding based on the word inside, which is what we want. And let's replace the icons. So again, be careful to choose the frame and not just the vector. There are a few ways to do this, but like the easiest way that I have found is to click on the frame, copy it by clicking Command C. I'm going to go into this frame here. See, again, like uh, I was pressing Command and I clicked on this vector and it chose the vector and not the frame. Um, I would like be very careful on what you're choosing and what you're replacing. So I'm going to click on the frame. So this is an option that exists within the right-hand side menu as well. You click on the right-hand side, you have the paste to replace option. I also like using the shortcut, so it's Command Shift R, and that replaces the icon inside. As you can see, like the size did not like change because we initially changed the size of the icon to 32. So I'm going to go back in here and click on lock aspect ratio, and I'm going to change the width to 32, and that changes the height as well. And yeah, that changed the size of the icon as well in relation. So that looks good to me. Okay, let's do shopping. So I'm clicking on the frame, copying it, going back here, clicking on the frame, Command Shift R, which is paste to replace, and then changing the size. Let's do this 2 more times. Okay, so that's your navigation frame. Now, if you've noticed in most apps, when you have a navigation frame like this, like you have to indicate what part of the navigation you're clicking on. And the way that you do that, like the way that some apps choose to do that is to have like an outline for some of the icons, and the icon that's selected is filled. That's something that like that's a good practice to follow. Or they sometimes include like a color in the background. So yeah, when you're using like different apps next time, like just notice how like different companies do the same thing. It's useful to know, especially for when you decide the final like visual design of your app. So I'm gonna go in here and I want to update the home icon to this like filled in state. I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna hit Command C. I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna hit Command Shift R, and then lock aspect ratio, change that to 32. Okay. So let's see. The other thing that I did not do is that because I duplicated the frame, I need to now go back in and change the name of the frame because this is, again, obviously not home nav option. So let's quickly do that as well. I'm going to call this profile because that's what it is. But yeah, I'm just, okay. So now what you can do is that we can make this into a component. Again, like components are useful because this is something that will live on all of your screens. And if you decide to make a change in this, you don't want to be going into, and you're probably going to have like maybe like 20 to 50, versions of your like screens. So like changing a component like this that lives on every screen is going to be really difficult. So having a component makes sense because that way you only change the main component and like everything, every other instance gets updated through that. So I'd always like recommend doing the legwork up front and like making those components because then it makes your job a lot faster, a lot easier as you go on in your project. So I'm gonna rename this frame 76 to home nav, or actually I'm gonna call it bottom nav. Okay. So you're a few places to make this a component. I think like on your right hand menu. Let's see if okay, it looks like that does not exist on the right-hand menu, but I did see this in class. Somebody did not have the option on the right side menu here. But it was like a floating menu option over here. So if you don't see it on the right, don't panic. It's usually here on the bottom. So I'm gonna click on this frame. I'm gonna in on the right side menu next to this section, you have this for diamond looking icon. I'm going to click on that to create component. And that just automatically makes it a component. And yeah, so let's do, okay. So now what I'm going to do is create a variation of the component. So like I said in a bottom nav, like this indicates that home is selected. So in order to do the same thing for say when me is selected, uh, you don't want to have to make like multiple components because then switching them out becomes an issue. So the way that you make this easier for yourself is to create a variant of that component so that on the screen when you use it, it's easy to switch out, which I'll show you in just a second. So let's first create the variant. An easy way to do this is like when you select your component, you see this menu has changed. So this diamond has a plus in it, which is basically the add variant option. Um, yeah, I'm gonna. So you can click on this and describe how to use this component. This is useful when you create like big design systems and you're the designer in charge of creating the design system. You want other people to know how to use the component you're creating. So link to documentation is usually you work with developers when you create a design system and have them like create the code for your component so it's like easy to like implement your designs. So that is usually the link to documentation. And yeah, so let's go back in and I'm just going to click on plus and that automatically creates a variant for the bottom nav. So you can see like it expands the component box, and then you have like two variants in here. But right now it's the same. Like there's no difference between one and two. So let's go and change that quickly. So I'm going to go back to this icon here and I'm going to replace the home icon with that. Again, choose the frame and then hit Command Shift R. And then I'm going to update the size to 32. And then I want the me icon to be selected, which is this icon here. So I'm going to replace that. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So the other thing that you do when you create variants is that, okay, let's actually try and put this in our frame. So I am going to go to Assets. I'm going to go to Components created in this file, and let's go to Sandbox. Sorry, I'm just moving at my video so much. Okay. The one that I created right now is bottom nav, so I'm just going to go here and drag this into my screen. And that's how I would like uh, insert a component. Let's move this back to file so you can see what I'm selecting. So I'm going to click on bottom nav. This is right now sitting inside the phone frame. I'm going to center align it, and then I'm going to click on bottom, so it's like bottom aligned. Although I don't really like finally want it to sit right there. But yeah, this just, so as you can see, like this is sort of within the layout guide that we created previously. And it's up to you how strict you are with the layout guide. I am currently okay with it being like a little bit outside, which you might not be. So you might want to come in and change the gap to say 22, 20, so that it like perfectly sits in there. But just make sure that it's a conscious choice and not something that's just happening. But yeah, so I'm gonna click on horizontal align, and this looks good. So when I've put in an instance of my component, you can see, first it links to where the component is from, and then it tells you like property one default, and then it says variant two, which is the one that we created. So I mean, this is like it's just like the filler text that it's put in. But I would say like when you're creating a component, go in and change what the property is, change, what variant it is as well. Um, but yeah, so let's go in and I'm gonna say property is like nav selected. And I'm gonna say this is selected. Okay, I'm actually gonna change this to say nav. And then this one has home selected, this one has profile selected. Yeah. So for every variant, you can add like multiple properties essentially. Like when like you create like big design systems, like your component can have multiple properties, but for the sake of this class, like I think one is more than enough. So now when I go back into my component instance, like you can see like this is just a lot more clearer as to what the options are. And it just makes it easier for like the next designer to use what I created. Okay, so now that we have our component, let's go back in. And yeah, so the next part is to, sorry. Okay, the next part is to recreate these following screens. And yeah, there's some instructions on how to create the background for the navigation as well. So let's go back in. As always, like, if you want to, like, this looks fine to me, but in the future, if you're like creating components for your screen and you're not sure like what exactly, I mean, if you're not sure about the size or in relation to the phone screen, you can always like click on it and click on the play button and oops, let's see, go back. Yeah. So this puts your screen within like the iPhone 16. and you can see your component in relation to the size of the phone. So this makes like this gives you an idea of like what your design is going to look like on a phone. And you can like use this and make sure that your fonts are readable, your icon sizes look fine, they're not like too large, and yeah, essentially like see your design in real time. Okay, let's go back. Like this, like the bottom nav looks okay to me. It's not the greatest, but yeah, it'll do for now. So let's go back. Okay. Um, I'm actually going to copy over these two screens, Mhm. just so that I have them for reference. I'm gonna put it on the left. Okay. All right. So let's create like this background. So an easy thing to do, of course, is I'm clicking on L, which is line. Like all your shapes are within the third menu, and just like draw across a line. And if you hold down on shift when you draw a line, it like ends up being straight. But if you don't hold down on shift, it goes like in all sorts of angles. But yeah, so this is like an easy way to do it. But if you want to have like say a shadow and like have that sort of like effect where you can tell that the navigation is sitting above the screen, you can put in a rectangle. So I'm going to remove this. I'm actually going to hit R on my keyboard, and this goes into the rectangle option, and I'm going to drag it out. There's a few interesting ways. Actually, I'm going to get rid of the layout grid for now because we don't need it. Oops. Uh, There we go. Okay, the layout guide is gone. So now, right, currently this rectangle is sitting above the bottom navigation. I'm actually gonna take it out. And what I'm going to do is first I'm going to go into fill and I'm going to change it to white. The reason I can also make this transparent, but the reason I'm not making it transparent is because I want whatever's behind like whatever else is on the screen to be scrollable. So when you're scrolling, like you don't want it appearing behind your bottom navigation. So you want like an opaque rectangle. Yeah, so I'm gonna go into fill and then I'm gonna go give it, I just want like a top stroke. I don't want a border all around the rectangle. So I'm gonna go into stroke. And this gives me like four, like the entire border. The way to change that is to go into this option here, like individual strokes, and then click on top. And that makes sure that like, you have like the border only on the top. And then I'm going to click on the rectangle and I want a shadow essentially to make sure that the menu is a little bit raised. So I'm going to go into effects. And then it automatically gives me a drop shadow, which is what I want. I don't like right now, I don't really care about the rest, but yeah. So drop shadow, and if I click on the FX settings, this essentially lets me like customize like where I want the shadow to sit. So I want the shadow to appear above and not below. And currently its Y is 4, so it's appearing below. So I'm gonna put it as -4. Yeah, let's put this in our screen. Okay, I actually want it to be a little bit blurrier, so I'm gonna do 10. And I'm gonna reduce this opacity of the shadow to 10. Okay, maybe that's too much. So I'm gonna do 15. Okay, that's a little bit better. Like I think like I want a subtle shadow for my design, so this is something that I want. So I'm just gonna send this to the back. As always, you can use this bracket as the shortcut, and that automatically sends it to the back of like every element on the screen. And I'm going to center. So a good trick to know on Figma is that if you hold down on option, like, okay, if you select a layer, hold down on option, it tells you how many pixels away it is from each of the borders. So currently, like I'm hovering on the phone frame, so it's giving me like how many pixels away it is from the border of each frame. But if I click on the rectangle, it tells me that it's like 10 pixels away from the bottom, but 18 from the top. Again, like keep the borders in mind. You always want to have like borders around your design. So I actually want this to be, 24 pixels maybe from the bottom. Okay, no, that's too much. Okay, I'm gonna make it 18 pixels from the bottom because that looks appropriate. And then I want a similar, height on top. So if I do this, it says it's 10. So I'm just gonna go in here. Height is 80. And we're just gonna say plus 8. And that automatically makes it 88, but it increased it on the bottom. So I'm gonna hit bottom align, and that brings it to the top. And yeah. Okay. So that was like creating our bottom nav. Now we can go in and like create the rest of the elements. So, okay, let's start with the rectangles. So I'm gonna go hit R on my keyboard and just drag out a few rectangles. Again, I'm gonna click on option, and this is like 30, 31, 37. And I'm gonna drag it out until like, okay, this is where your layout grid is useful because I'm gonna click on the frame. I'm gonna unhide the layout guide, and now I'm just gonna drag it. Because I am like, sort of sure that I want my content to like go across all of these screens. But if I want like maybe two columns in my design, then I would drag it to be this way. Okay, so this is like some of the maybe this is some of the content that I'm ideating for my screen. And yeah, so let's say you want to put in a search bar and like some icons on top. So let's go back in. I'm gonna hit option on my keyboard, and then I'm gonna drag this out. And I'm just going to alter this rectangle to be the bar on top. The way that you round the corners is you go into corner radius. Usually it'll look like this. So if you hit this, you're able to like change the individual corner radius. But if you want all of it to be similar, just this option is fine. So I'm gonna change this. Since the height is 38, I'm just gonna change it to 38 too. And that gives me a rounded rectangle. And if I click on O, that gives me a circle here. And if I click down on Shift, like it maintains like similar height and width. Whereas like if I drag it randomly, it gives me an ellipse. So, yeah, I'm gonna change, actually, let me change the height to 40. Oops, this. Okay, there we go. I'm hitting down an option and I'm like duplicating the circle. Okay. So the other thing is you'll notice that I put in a status bar um, in the assets. So feel free to like take this and copy this to your screens. And always make sure that it's, aligned to the top. And it's good practice to have your design start below the status bar because this accounts for like the dynamic island on iPhones. So you're not like designing, your design won't be blocked by the island and like by the time that appears. You always want your design to start below that. And there are similar, status bars for Android as well. So if you're designing for Android, let me know. I'll try and find the status bar for the Android screen as well. Okay, so, oh yeah, let me just show you. Hmm. Yeah, so as you can see, like the status bar, it essentially like accounts for this dynamic island in the iPhone. Okay, let's go back. Mm, all right. Okay, so it's actually, okay. I'm just going to do the simple version of the prototype and then we'll do the extras so that, it's easier. I think it'll be easier for people to follow along. So I'm moving this below. so it's out of the way. And I mean, for now, let's see. Okay, let's do this quickly. This is a status bar. Um, so the thing is, like, okay, if I choose all of these and hit Shift A, um, yeah, it gives me like a grid sort of auto layout, but it's a little bit hard to uh, customize. And it's like it gets a little funky. So what I'd always recommend is to put the things on the same rows. Like if there are multiple elements on the same row, put them into an auto layout before you make the other elements in an auto layout. Just this is just like good practice for you, so that it becomes easier to manipulate as you go along. So actually, let me hide the guide for now. Okay, I'm gonna click on these two, Shift A, that's my first frame. And then I'm gonna click on these three because they're the same, same kind of elements, and then click on Shift A, so that becomes the auto layout. And then I'm gonna actually change the gap here to C24, because I want like a similar looking gap. And then I want these two. Actually, like I want these three to be the next level of auto layout because I want those three items to sit at the same, have the same space between them. So let's actually like figure out the auto layout for these elements first. So I'm going to click on, see, since I want these two circles to be like closer than this one, I'm going to make these into like an auto layout frame first by selecting those and then Shift A. And I'm going to increase the gap to 12. Okay, and now I can include this in the parent frame, and then I'm going to click on Shift A, and that makes it into the parent auto layout frame. And now like I can like group these three together. So I'm going to select this, sorry. And now I'm going to hit Shift A, and I'm going to increase the gap to, actually, I'm going to make it, since this was 24, I'm going to make this 32. Okay. And like I said, like have your design start below the status bar. And if you can see, like, when I drag, it automatically tries to tell me like how far away it is from each of the elements. So right now this is 23 pixels away, which actually I'd just rather this start right below the status bar. Yeah. Okay. And let's just make sure this is in the middle. Okay. You can switch on your layout guide. And yeah, that looks to be fine so far. Okay. And now let's just recreate the next screen. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to click on this screen. I'm going to press down an option and duplicate it. And the first thing I'm going to do is, because this is the screen with profile selected, I'm going to go in and I'm going to change the variant of this to profile selected. And then I'm going to change the elements in the screen. So for this screen, I just want like the left icon and then have like a bunch of elements below. So I'm going to expand this frame on the right. Yeah, and I don't want these, so I'm just going to delete those. I don't want this frame either, so I'm going to delete that. I want multiple of these, but it's a different element compared to like what it was on the home screen. So I'm actually going to increase the height to say 48. And I'm gonna, while I have this selected, I'm just gonna click on Command D. And that automatically duplicates it, puts it within the auto layout, and the gap already exists. So then it's like consistently um, spaced within the frame. Okay. So say I just have like five, I just want like five elements within this profile. Okay. Now comes the exciting part of actually like creating a prototype and showing other people the interactions that you're thinking about. So this is the most basic form of a prototype, and usually you won't need much more than this to showcase your designs. So let's get into it. On the right-hand menu, go into prototype. You can see like for me, these are already selected. Usually I think it's like this way, which is no device. So you can come in and you can specify the device that you want. You can also specify the color of if that's available to you. Um, I'm gonna click on black, and then if you're creating like a vertical or a horizontal design and you want it to change, you can change that as well. And you can also change the background color. If you want it to be white, if you want it to be gray, like you can like choose that. So I think it would matter in case you're like showing dark mode versus light mode and things like that, which we will get into later on. But yeah, for now, this seems okay. And what I'm going to do is, so the current prototype, what I want to happen is that when you click on the profile icon, it should change to the screen. And then when you click on the home icon, it should come back to the screen. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to click into this until I have this entire profile nav option frame selected. And as you can see, like, I'm already getting like these circles with a plus icon. Essentially, it means it's asking me if I want to like connect it to a different screen. So I'm going to click on the plus icon and I'm going to drag it to the screen that I want, which is this. And it gives you a few options. So I wanted to trigger on tap, and I wanted to navigate to this. And yeah, I'm just going to make sure that it's navigating to the frame that I want. Again, good practice to name your frames in case you are. It just makes things a lot easier as you go on. Okay, so the animation, I actually don't want any animation. I just want it to like instantly change. So just like it's selected. Yeah, these options don't apply to me either. So I'm just going to click out of it. And I'm going to do the same for this screen, which is again, click on the navigation, click into home, and drag out the plus to this screen. I'm going to make sure the options are what I want, and that's it. So you can see like automatically, because we started a prototype from this frame, it sort of created a flow. Um, so for example, like this matters when you have like different, um, you know, there's no other word, I guess, like different flows within your design. For example, you would have like a flow for login, you would have a flow for sign up, you would have a flow for creating and customizing your profile. So, like, you would want those to sit separately. So, for each, like, um, for each set of screens, you would have a different flow within the prototype. So this just makes it easier for you to like divide those when you're showcasing it to whoever it is, your developers, your clients, whoever. So if I click on the play icon and flow here, it actually brings up um, a phone screen here. So I can like, I don't even need to go into this screen in order to, check out my prototype interactions. This just makes it a lot easier for you to like edit it as you're designing. So let's see, I'm gonna, um, I, okay. Sorry, my Zoom menu is blocking this. I'm gonna click on this and, oops, I do not want that. Okay, that option won't go away. So I'm just actually going to go into this and I'm going to check if my interaction's working. And it is. So if I click on profile, it changes to the profile section. If I click on home, it changes to the home screen. All right, great. So this is most of the basic things you need to like get started on creating your wireframes. But I know that there are going to be a few like extra use cases that you might come across because these are like very common in design. One of which is scrolling, and the other one is like pop-ups. So yeah, so let's just like get into that and quickly see how we can prototype those as well. I'm going to show you two types of scrolls, horizontal and vertical scrolling. So let's get into it. Uh, I'm going to click on this main home screen. I'm going to click down on option to duplicate it. And essentially, a screen is scrollable when, you know, there's like content that extends beyond the height or like beyond the width of the screen. Sorry. Okay, so let's do the first one, which is to create the horizontal scrolling. So I'm going to like um, remove this frame. Okay, so the way that I do that is like sorry, I'm going to remove the auto layout, which essentially means that I'm removing the frame. So I'm clicking on the frame, right click, and then I'm going to say ungroup. And that like automatically removes the auto layout frame that existed. Um, Say for example, so this is currently based on the DoorDash home screen. Um, they have like a horizontal scroll within their home icon, homepage. So let's just try and recreate that. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm not going to get into the details, but essentially your wireframing beyond, say, maybe like the final icons or like the pictures, your wireframe should have text to show us what the content is on the page that you're showing. Okay, so I'm gonna actually like remove this frame as well by right clicking and then saying ungroup. Okay, so let's get into it. For example, say that, I wanted like multiple um, rectangles within this to be scrollable. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna again like ungroup, and I'm gonna hit Command B, and that duplicated the rectangle. So I'm holding down on Shift and moving them out. So what this does, like what holding down on Shift does is that like it helps me like move it within the same like height. If I did not hold down on Shift, it would move everywhere, which, I mean, you could always use the alignment options, but because I know that I want it to be in the same line, I'm just going to hold down on Shift because it makes my job easier. But yeah, so you see like this automatically takes it out of the iPhone frame. If you do this, it's not going to be scrollable because you want like all your scrollable content to sit within the phone frame. So I'm going to choose these four rectangles by holding down on Shift. And then I'm going to make this into an auto layout frame by clicking down on Shift A. And that creates a frame, but what it did was it created two like frames, one inside the phone and one outside. So that's not what we want. So I'm going to click on Command Z. And actually, you know what? Let me choose these two rectangles. I'm clicking on Shift A. So that creates an auto layout. And then I'm going to click on these two rectangles within the left menu. And then I'm going to drag it into this frame. And you can see like the rectangles disappear. Okay, this is because we have an option called clip content here. So essentially, like any content that exists outside of like the phone frame, it hides it. Essentially, like trying to show you how it would look on an actual phone frame. But for the sake of this design, I want to see like what's outside before I make it scrollable. So I'm gonna like unchoose the clip content, and you can see like this is now like the content that you want. So if I go into prototype, right, and I'm gonna actually, let's see, right. So currently this isn't like scrollable at all. Um, but okay, so let's go to, okay, I'm gonna click on this screen so that this is the screen that we're showing. I'm gonna click on this frame, and you see these options here. So there's position, which is scroll with parent, parent being like the main frame. But we just want to make like this part of the frame scrollable. So I want a horizontal scroll. So I'm going to click on overflow, say horizontal. Now it says like you get this exclamation mark, and then it says for scrolling to work on this frame, the content needs to be bigger than the frame. So the frame that it's referring to right now is just the frame holding like all the squares in it. Um, so we need the frame to be smaller than the content inside it. So the way that you can do this is to drag the frame inwards. Um, and one is, of course, like you can drag it the way that I have. Um, but I would always say that it's good practice to hold down on command and then drag the frame in, because sometimes when you have like auto layout put in, like it changes the size of the frame or the size of the content inside it. So it's always good to like just hold down on command when you're changing the size of the frame. But yeah, so now that I like put the size of the frame to match the size of the phone, uh, the exclamation mark goes away, which means technically, yeah, we should be able to scroll through all the content that we have on this frame. So that's how you put in horizontal scrolling. It's pretty easy to do. Um, okay, so let's quickly get into how to create the vertical scroll and also how to animate pop-ups. Okay, so it is safe to assume that if you had like a long screen, it would probably be something like this, where, all your content is like you've elongated the screen so that all your content is sitting within it. So I'm just going to click into the rectangle, click on Command D to duplicate and increase the content. So it's safe to assume that your screen is going to be something like this. So, I mean, this is automatically, I think, like because the screen is so long and there is like no overflow technically assigned, it is still going to be scrollable because the phone screen extends beyond the height of the iPhone. But we want to be more intentional about this because, for example, you see the time is scrolling. That usually doesn't happen on your phone. Also, you want your bottom nav to stay in place, even though like you just want the middle content to be scrollable, right? So yeah, so let's get into that, uh, into how to make that. So there are a few options within Prototype here that you can use. So first, let's go and make this fixed. So if you go into position, it's currently scroll with parent, which means it goes away when you scroll. You would want it to be fixed, which is stay in place. What sticky means is that it's scrolling until it reaches the top and then it sticks there and then doesn't move beyond that. But that's not what we really want for our time. So we just want it to stay in place. We also, excuse me, we also want our bottom nav to stay in place. So I'm gonna select both of these. Again, good practice to frame it so that we're just like, you know, moving one frame and not having to select both of them all the time. So I'm going to select both, hit Shift A, and that essentially frames the content. Okay, so I'm going to say I want this to be fixed. But this, what it does is like fix it at the bottom of the screen, which is not what I want. So I'm going to actually look at the height of the iPhone here, which is 86852. And I'm going to change the height of the iPhone here to match that. And you can see like because we didn't clip the content, like whatever content is beyond the frame is still appearing. So I'm going to go back in here, choose the bottom nav. And if I click on bottom align, it should automatically align itself to the bottom. So now this means that, um, I can always, essentially the mainframe size doesn't change. So this means I can always see the bottom nav. I can always see the time. But if you notice, like I'm trying to scroll vertically, but it's not happening. Again, that's because our frame actually doesn't have an overflow set to it. So I'm going to click on the frame. I'm going to go into prototype. I'm going to set the overflow behavior to vertical. Because we only wanted scrolling in the vertical direction. Again, you'll see this warning pop up. So I'm going to reduce the frame size by clicking down on command and moving the frame size up to here. So now the content exists beyond the frame. So it's going to be scrollable and the warning is also gone. So let's go test it, test it out. So yeah. There you see. So now you have like scrolling content within your frame. And yeah, that was easy to do. The last thing I will do is for us to create a pop-up. I'm not like this is probably something that you've seen in a lot of apps. Let me do a quick mock-up to show you what it would look like. So actually, let me copy over a screen without the extra content. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna copy this over. Okay. Um, okay, let's like design a quick pop-up. I'm clicking down on R. I'm dragging the rectangle across. Good. Let's go back into design. I'm gonna make it the fill black. I'm going to align it to the screen, right? Yeah. So if you see the red part, that just means that like it's aligned to the edges of the frame. Okay, so it's black, but I want to see like what's behind it. So I'm gonna actually add an effect. I'm gonna change that to background blur, which is going to blur the background, but I still can't see it because the opacity is 100. So let's make that 10. Actually, I'm gonna increase it to 20. And that sort of hides like what's behind the screen. Um, but yeah, okay. So the reason that you can still see the bottom nav is because now that we've applied scrolling prototype settings to the elements on the screen, whatever you add is it automatically assumes that you want that element to be scrolling. So it puts it, behind the elements that are fixed. But essentially, like this is like a background blur, so that'll sit behind the pop-up. And usually you can't access your bottom nav when there is a pop-up. So I'm actually going to move this by dragging it in the left menu to fixed above all of it. Okay. And I'm going to click down on R and I'm going to do another rectangle, move that up. I'm going to change the color to white. I'm gonna change, I want the corner radius of the tops to be different and then the bottom to be like 0. So let's change it individually to 20, 20. And yeah, so actually, and let's, you know, bring in a close icon here. So the way to do that is like I've linked a few places that you can find icons, but I think the Google library has quite a few that you can use. Um, so I'm just going to go in here, search, actually close is right here. So I'm going to click on this and you can download the SVG if you want to play around with the thickness or the shape of the icon. Like you can go into SVGs, but for the sake of the class, like it's just very simple to like copy the icon as is as a PNG and use that. So I'm just gonna click on the copy here. I'm going back into Figma and I'm gonna hit Command V. So this copies over the icon. So this is just like a close icon. Um, but yeah, this is not sitting within I think it's sitting within the section, but it's not sitting within the iPhone frame. So I'm just gonna um cut it like, Command X. I'm going to click on the phone frame and then I'm going to hit Command V. So now you can see like it's within the frame, but again, like it's behind everything because it thinks it's scrollable. So I'm going to drag it above the rectangle and make that fixed. And I'm going to drag it where I want it to be. And there you go. So, I mean, the easy way, like this is essentially what I would want like a bottom navigation to look like. Let's see. Okay, it's taking some time to load. There we go. So this is essentially what I want my bottom navigation to look like. And it's very easy for me to come in here and then, go into prototype, click into the rectangle, drag out the connection to the screen. So on tap, it would navigate here, and then it would just instantly open that up. So if we see that in place, that's one way to do it. But there is a different way to do this, which you might want to try, which is essentially, so let's go back into design, and I'm gonna actually frame these two. So I'm clicking on the rectangle, I'm clicking on the icon, and then I'm gonna frame the selection by hitting shift. No, I'm just gonna right click and say frame selection. Because right now I don't want an auto layout applied to this because um, there's no other elements on the screen. It's just the X icon for now. So I'm just gonna frame it for now. And I'm gonna drag it out of the iPhone frame. Let's get rid of this by putting it on the side. I'm gonna call this, okay, just gonna call it a bottom sheet. And essentially, like if I go back into prototype, I can I can essentially drag this rectangle to uh, the bottom sheet navigation. Now, I still want the trigger to be on tap. But okay, let's actually remove this because since that's on tap, it's not letting us do that. So, okay, I'm gonna click into the arrow to edit the animation. So again, trigger is still on tap, but instead of navigate to, I want to say open overlay. So this opens the frame as an overlay, which means like it sits on top of all of the elements. And the overlay, like this is the layer that we want the overlay to be. So since I've named it bottom sheet, it's easy for me to find it. As you can see, like I have like a lot of like frame, 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 frame. That's on me. I should have named my layers. So yeah, name your layers. It's always easy. Makes it easy to find. So click on bottom sheet. I want the position to be actually on the bottom. So I'm going to say bottom center. Um, and I'm going to say click on background. And this is, remember the overlay, like the rectangle that I put in with the background blur? This essentially does that for you. Animation, I'm going to set, instead of instant, I'm going to set it to like move in. And I want it to move in from the bottom. And I'm going to say ease in. And then the duration is set to 500 milliseconds. I've just set it like this slowly so you can see the animation happen. Okay, so let's go back and see what that looks like. And as you can see, like the pop-up comes up. So the other like animations I would want to add is if you click in here, it says close when clicking outside. I want to check that so that if I close outside it, it automatically closes it. The other, like, of course, the other like hard close button is you can just drag out the prototype to be on tap and say navigate to iPhone 16. And I don't want it to be moving in, I just want it to be instant. So that way you can close the bottom sheet in two ways, which is normal behavior as seen on other apps. So yeah, go in here. I can click out of the bottom sheet through close, or I can like click outside it and it closes. So yeah, those are two ways to get that done. I think it's like a useful thing to know, especially because this means you can ideate different ways, like different features for your app. And you also have a cool way of like showcasing it as well. So yeah, hope that's helpful. Thank you for listening and good luck.